Hi, Mike. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Let's start with a quick intro to start things off. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your carnivore journey? Could you tell me how it all started?
Sure. Thank you very much, Joseph. I appreciate you inviting me onto your show. My name is Mike, and I go by my channel name is Mr. Cast Iron on YouTube. And I do cast iron cooking and cleaning videos showing people how to take care of cast iron skillets and Dutch ovens and things like that. And so we do some cooking videos as well, and different recipes and things like that. But as far as the carnivore is concerned, I had actually got some issues health wise back in July of this past year, actually prior to that. But in July, I went into my primary care physician and had some tests run. And lo and behold, he come back and his nurse called me the next day after we'd done some blood tests and had told me that my A1C had jumped to 7.5. And so I was already having some issues, and I knew my sugar probably was high. And so lo and behold, that puts you in the diabetic stage. And I think 5.3 or 5.6 is the baseline to determine whether you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. And at 6.5, I believe, and higher puts you in the diabetic range. And so I was in the diabetic range, and I knew I was going to have to make some changes. I knew my blood pressure was high, and as well as my sugar too. But so I told my wife then, when I got the report back from the nurse, that my A1C was now at 7.5, and she said, we would like to schedule you to come in and talk to the doctor, uh, and maybe figure out some type of medical options that we can, maybe prescribe something for you to try to get this under control. And I said, well, I said, I appreciate that. I appreciate you calling me and letting me know what it was. But I've got a question. I said, now, an A1C typically is based upon about a 90-day span where they take an average of your glucose to determine what your A1C is, right? And she said, yes. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, just allow me another 90 days and allow me to see if I can get this under control by diet and exercise. And then we'll come back in 90 days and see where we're at. And she said, well, okay, well, good luck. And I know it's hard, but good luck. And I said, well, okay, we'll see you in 90 days. And so that's what we did.
90 days. So that's quite fast. I mean, the whole process takes 90 days. Okay. So what happened then after that?
Well, what I actually did at that point, I told my wife when I got off the phone with the nurse, I said, I said, my wife being a type 2 diabetic and has been for 20 years, so she has dealt with diabetes for a long time, and most of her family, I don't know if it's hereditary or not. I really don't believe it's hereditary. I believe it's in on individual basis. But anyway, she's been dealing with diabetes for 20 years, and I told her, I said, I'm not going to go on metformin or any kind of medication that they're wanting to prescribe to me. I said, I'm not going to have, any kind of lap band surgeries or anything like that. I'm not going to do any kind of Mounjaro or Zempic or anything like that. I said, I ate my way into this condition and I'm going to eat my way out of it. And so I knew at that point that it was basically, the diet that was causing the problem. And so, and sedentary life too, because I'm a truck driver, so I sat quite a bit. And so I told her, I said, I'm going to go today and start doing this because we always say, we're going to do something, we're going to make a change someday. Well, some days don't always come until a crisis hits. And so this was my crisis. This was my why that I wanted to change. And I said, I'm going to start today. And so that's exactly what I did. I immediately was familiar with carnivore and keto anyway, because I had done it prior in a few years prior to that with the same similar uh, illnesses and situations. And why I fell off the wagon, I don't know, but we just sometimes fall back. People say, well, it's not sustainable. It actually is if you have strong willpower. And I just fell off because of the type of channel I run, and the things that I cook. And I just love to cook. I love to eat. And so I fell off the wagon and I didn't stay strong and strict with it until this situation happened here in July. And I knew then I had to make a change. And I had to not just make a change just to get my A1C under control and my glucose under control, my sugar, but I had to make a life change. I had to make this a life decision, because I know that if I fall off again, I've had a second chance, and I don't want to take another chance. I don't want to try to have a third chance, if you understand what I mean. So I know that this is something that I've got to stick with, and I know that it is, it's sustainable, and I know that it has unbelievable benefits to it if you will do it.
Very nice. So before you started Carnivore, who were the I'm sure you did your research. Like, how did you who was the first voices did you listen to? You look it up on YouTube, and then you find like some of the voices in the community. Who were the first people did you listen to, and how long did you do the research for?
Well, initially, it was probably 2019, back before the C word, COVID, we can say it now, but it was back before that. And I had actually researched some stuff for my wife, trying to find some answers for her diabetes. And I was already overweight, having some issues, but I wasn't having the type of issues that initially came along later with a pain in my side, and which I found out later from my doctor, and that it was actually a fatty liver that was causing this problem. And what really got me excited about that was I had an older brother that developed pancreatic cancer and passed away at the age of 59. And within about 13 or 14 months later, his son, being 38 years old, developed the same thing, same pancreatic cancer, and passed away as well. So I lost a brother and a nephew in a short amount of time. So I knew when he told me that I had fatty liver, I was having some problems already with sugar, and I didn't want to certainly develop pancreatic cancer. So I started researching different things. And where are you going to go? You're going to go to Google, and you're going to go to YouTube. And so I went to YouTube, and I started researching certain keywords, and several people started popping up. One of them mainly was Dr. Ken Berry, which I really resonated with him because, as you can tell with my accent, I'm from the South, Mid-South, and he's from middle part of Tennessee. So we, I just basically clicked with him, and I could relate to what he was saying because we're very close in age, actually. And, I could tell he was shooting a straight shot. He was telling people the truth, because what he said, he said, here I was, nearly 300 pounds. I was overweight, and I was trying to tell my patients to eat more, exercise more, eat less and exercise more to get your weight under control. And here I am, a fat, overweight doctor. Now, how are they going to, respect me and do what I say if I'm not in shape myself? So he started out on his journey of trying to find out what he could do, to get his health in control as well. And so I just resonated with that, and I just started listening to more and more of his videos, and then more and more of it made sense to me. And at that particular time, he was basically had moved from, I think, paleo or whatever into keto. He hadn't even become full-blown carnivore at that time, and later moved on into carnivore, which I know you as well as your audience knows. Keto is basically not a diet. It's actually a term stands for ketosis, which means you take and put your body into a condition where it actually burns body fat instead of the glucose or the sugar from carbohydrates. And so when you get in ketosis, you're burning body fat and making what's called ketones. And so that's how you get the term keto or ketosis. And carnivore is just an extended version of that. And it's more of a strict version of keto. Basically, keto is eating meat and certain vegetables, and keeping your vegetables or your carbohydrate intake anywhere from 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates a day. Now, carnivore basically excludes all carbohydrates, uh, fruit, uh, vegetables, nuts, berries, juices, things like that. Anything with sugar or anything that actually turns into sugar is something that you exclude off a carnivore. And so it's an extreme version of keto. And so he basically moved into the carnivore realm and started talking a lot about that, started making a lot of videos. And so I did too as well. I actually this channel, Mr. Cast Iron Channel, initially was named Keto Style. And so when I began this channel, I started making keto type recipes and talking about my journey, how I'd lost weight, and the things that happened to me. And so we did that for a good while. And then later on, as I said, I kind of fell off the wagon. I got more into the cast iron cooking and cast iron restoration and things like that. So we changed our name. I actually have a story about how my name got changed from a friend of mine that called and left a message one time because I was making videos with keto type recipes in my cast iron. So he called me and I didn't actually catch his call, and it went to voicemail, and he left a voicemail and he said, "Hey, skillet head, what are you doing, Mr. Cast Iron?" And when he said, "Hey, Mr. Cast Iron," it just a bell went off in my head, and I thought, that's a cool channel name. And so, being a cast iron cook and loving with cooking with cast iron over the years, I thought, I'm going to check and see if there's anybody on YouTube has Mr. Cast Iron name. And so I researched that, and lo and behold, there was no one with that. So I immediately changed my keto style channel to Mr. Cast Iron. And so we moved into that, and we bought the website domain too, mrcastiron.com. We're not as active on our website as we are on our YouTube channel, but anyway, that's basically how that come about. And it was through, following Ken Berry. You asked me who were some of the others. Sean Baker was one of the keynote guys that actually started, and maybe has actually was the one that's been coined the phrase carnivore. And so he was another one that I followed. There was another guy from Tennessee that I really enjoyed. He's just an old country boy like me, and his channel name was Butter Bob Briggs, and he was very down to earth. He only made like 39 or 40 videos is all he ever made. He doesn't make any videos anymore for various reasons. But anyway, I really resonated with Butter Bob. One of his videos that you may have heard of, you may not, but you can look all this up. His channel is still on YouTube. It's called Butter Bob Briggs. But one of the things that he was well known for was a title on a video that was called Butter Makes Your Pants Fall Off. And so what he was talking about, when you increase your full fat butter, which is a good fat, by the way, it just helps to burn fat off of your body. We've been told and taught all these years that fat is bad for you. We've been told that, fat's not good for you. Fat will make you fat. And it's just the opposite of that, Joseph. Actually, fat will help burn fat off of our bodies. And so I just absorbed every video from Butter Bob Briggs that he had, and many of Ken Berry's. I haven't seen all of Dr. Berry's, but I've seen many. I've seen a lot of Sean Baker. And then as time progressed, there were many other people that moved into, YouTube and started making videos. One that I really like now is Dr. Anthony Chafee. He's very powerful and very straightforward, and these are all our medical doctors. These are all reliable sources, and but he is very strict. He only eats beef and and maybe some butter and some eggs, and that's it. I don't even know if he eats eggs very
Yeah.
much, but
He just does the lion diet, just strictly
yeah,
beef, water, and salt. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Very powerful, but I really enjoy his content. I love his style of teaching, and he's straightforward about it. And so there's many choices out on YouTube. You just have to be careful. You have to listen to it and put two and two together yourself and try to figure out, because our bodies are all made different. So you got to figure out what actually works for you. There's some things that some of them suggest, it just doesn't work for me. And so I had to figure out my own deal. And so I'm on a good path. I know what works for me and what doesn't. And so I'm happy with it. I'm not worried about, you're always constantly thinking, well, what am I going to eat now? What am I going to eat now? When you eat, I basically eat once a day. I eat what's called OMAD, or 1 meal a day, and I eat plenty. It's not a diet. This is a way of eating. It's not a diet. A diet tells me that that's a restriction, and that you have to restrict your calories. And this is not a restriction diet. So you don't have to worry about, am I going to be starving? Am I going to be hungry? Only if you want to be. I mean, you might go and do some fasting and kind of, restrict that way, but no, this is not a restricted diet. You can eat as much as you want until you get full and then quit. And then, that's what I do. And then the next day I'll eat whatever I want to eat.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, those voices, the people you've watched, the Dr. Ken Berry, Sean Baker, Dr. Chafee. I've listened to all of them. I think so much in the carnivore, they have so much influence in the carnivore space. I know you mentioned also that you like to cook and do recipes also. Before going carnivore, what was your favorite food, or what did you used to like to cook?
Well, I've always been a meat eater, so I really always loved steak. I love to cook steak, and ribeye is one of my favorites. So that was another reason why I didn't have any problem going carnivore, because I love to eat meat. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she can't hardly stand meat, so it's hard for us as a couple to do certain things like that. Now, she does love my steak. I will say that. She loves the way I cook steak. I've been here in the Mid South. We fried everything, but back then, we fried everything in vegetable oil, or peanut oil if we were cooking fish or something like that. And so it was a lot of unhealthy oils. And so I had to change to what was more healthy oil, like beef tallow and lard and, bacon grease and things like that. And I have some bacon grease videos on my channel. So it's something that I've done along the way. But, some of the food choices, as you're asking about, like pizza and gosh, just things, like everybody, the standard American diet that everybody loves to eat, the comfort food, so to speak, is what we're so comfortable with and used to eating. And so those types of things was certainly not working in my favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the same for me. I mean, I like meat also. I guess it's probably the same reason why it was easy for me to transition. I mean, the only problem I would say, like, probably for me, was that I pair it with different types of carbs like rice and bread and so much more. But yeah,
Well,
um,
one of my
yeah,
favorite foods that I really loved, and I've basically quit, was Chinese food. I love to go to a good Chinese buffet. And when you said rice, it made me think of that, And Mexican food is another food. I love fajitas and stuff. And of course, every time you get a order of fajitas, they've got a side plate of lettuce and tomatoes and pico de gallo, and you got refried beans, and you got rice. And, it's just, I mean, a lot of that I can't eat anymore, but I loved it.
yeah, that's so true. That's the same for me. Yeah. Looking back at the start of your journey, was there any mistake, or like how did you learn from that? If there were any mistakes, right? If you ever had like a moment of doubt while you're transitioning, or was there a moment when you almost gave up? Hey, this carnivore thing might not be working. Has that ever happened? Like in the beginning?
Well, I'm going to say it probably continues. It wasn't just necessarily in the beginning, but I think it's something that all of us will have to deal with if you choose to go this route. And that's the social aspect of it, because my wife and I always loved to go out to eat, and our family, we would go out and eat. So you have to really think about the choices that you're going to make, because it's easy to say, oh, well, I'll just do it this one time. And so what can happen is that can cause you to feel really bad the next day if you make a wrong choice or if you eat something that your body's not used to. And I can tell it if I go out and eat. I can actually tell if the restaurant is using canola oil or vegetable oil or some other kind of oils when they cook something, because I can just tell how it makes my body feel the next day, sometimes almost immediately as I'm eating. And but you're gonna have issues. You're gonna have people say, "Oh, you're crazy. What are you doing? I mean, you gotta have vegetables. How can you just eat meat all the time?" So you're gonna have the social pressure from the outside, and a lot of times is from your own personal family.
That's so true. Yeah. um, During your before you have reversed diabetes, can you walk me through the struggle, like just living life in general? Like maybe are you having like sleep problems, just physical activity problems, or any issues like going through?
Oh yes, absolutely. I had many of those. Matter of fact, I had I'm fairly medium sized built, fairly stocky, and always have been fairly healthy most all my life. Very athletic as a young man. Played all kinds of sports and things like that, and always been a healthy eater, I thought, but it was actually unhealthy, the top choices I was making. And so as time progresses, as you get older, those things start to pile up on you. And so I actually gained quite a bit of weight. I actually reached a point of 275.6 pounds was my highest I've ever been in my life. And so I've always basically been about anywhere from 180 to 200 was always been my ideal weight. So as you can see, I went 75 pounds over what I would normally, what would be normal weight for me. And so when you gain that much weight, you get, you have fat around your neck, you have fat everywhere. And so that caused me to have snoring problems when I was sleeping. And so I was actually having some heart and chest issues too. And I went into my doctor at the time and I told him, I said, I've been having some chest pain, some chest issues. I'm kind of concerned about it. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, let's go and have an x-ray. And I said, an x-ray? And he said, yeah. He said, let's go do some checking around. And I told him I had this pain in my side. This was the first time I went on Carnivore. And I said, well, why an x-ray? And he said, well, Mike, I'll just tell you. He said, when you get our age, he said, we need to look around. He said, because sometimes we find things we're really not looking for. And I said, okay, I get what you're saying. And he said, well, let's go check and see. So anyway, that's how he was able to determine to tell me I had a fatty liver. And he said, I don't see any problems so far with your heart other than having to go and do, a more in-depth test like an EKG or whatever they're called. And he said, but I tell you what, he said, before we do that, he said, I want to ask you a few questions. He said, do you snore at night? I said, yeah. I said, my wife wakes me up sometimes and tells me that I'm snoring loud. And he said, well, that's kind of what I was getting ready to ask you next. If, you wake your wife up. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, he said, you may have what's called sleep apnea. He said, would you be willing to take a test? And he said, you don't have to go to the hospital or doctor or anything. He said, just, you can do it right here at home. And we'll monitor you and check you out and everything. And then so we did. And lo and behold, I was holding my breath at night, wasn't sleeping real good, and I was snoring. And so he come back. He said, Mike, he said, you got sleep apnea. He said, would you be willing to go on a CPAP machine? And I said, well, if it'll help me, yes. And I said, so because I just feel so tired all the time. I don't have any energy. And I said, sometimes I wake up of a morning and I'm more tired than when I went to bed the night before. And he said, well, I think that this is a good start. He said, let's try this and go from there. And if we need to do some additional tests later on your heart, we'll do that. And so I did. And lo and behold, I mean, it was just like, it was a difference between day and night when I actually got accustomed to wearing the crazy thing. That was the one thing, but anyway, I put it on. I got used to it. I was sleeping at night and I was sleeping all night long. And I wasn't waking her up anymore, so she was getting rest because prior to that, me snoring and waking her up, she wasn't getting rest either. So unhappy wife, is an unhappy life, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, we worked our way through the CPAP, and so, but carnivore, after losing so much weight, I've lost now. I'm currently down 54 pounds, and I lost a lot of neck fat and different things. And I haven't worn a CPAP in several weeks or a month or so, better actually, maybe 2 months now.
Oh
And
wait, sorry. How long have you been using the CPAP machine?
that probably started 20, 2022, I think it was.
2022.
So about 3 years.
Okay.
And so now I'm off of it, and I haven't used it since. I lost quite a bit of weight, and I sleep just as well now. And I there for a long time, I was actually conscious of it. I'd ask her, I'd say, Teresa, have I been snoring? Have I been waking you up? And she said, no, if you have, you haven't woken me up. I haven't noticed. And I said, well, I just want you to know, if I start snoring, let me know, because I want to, be aware of it. But so far, I've only maybe snored a couple nights out of 2 or 3 months, and a lot of times it was from working real hard the day before or something, maybe staying up late or something, whatever. But anyway, that was just one of the things that had gone away. Besides the weight, actually, losing the weight was a bonus. That really wasn't something that I was striving to do. I knew I needed to lose weight, and I knew I would lose weight by changing my diet, and I did. But some of the other things, Joseph, that was a big thing, was just, the sleep apnea was gone, snoring was gone, skin issues. I had some blemishes on my skin tags and different things, and over time those just went away, and my skin cleared up, my fingernails cleared up, my eyesight even got better. I went and had a vision test with my eye doctor. And he said, wow, he said, everything looks good. He said, matter of fact, it's actually even better than it was when you were here last year. And gosh, I just have a whole list of things that, has changed for me. Um, Energy is a big thing, man. I just have the energy. I get up every morning. I'm ready to go. I'm not dragging around. And brain fog was another thing, too. You're constantly you're having trouble to focus and concentrate, and all that's cleared up. I don't have that problem anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah. I can pretty much relate to just about everything you said about the benefits. Just like it's almost miraculous to me. Even the way you're describing it, it's just like, I don't know, magical. So,
Yes.
yeah. So now that you're carnivore, what does a typical day or week like eating for you look like? Do you stay consistent or do you switch things up? Maybe you can walk me through like what you usually eat. Do you stick with the same food each day or just mix it up, just like change it up during the week?
I do change up. I know a lot of people, like we were talking earlier about Dr. Chafee being on the lion diet, and I didn't explain what that was. You did. It's just basically beef and water and salt. And so it's even more extreme than carnivore. But I'm not that way. I eat any kind of meat, basically. I eat beef, I eat pork, I eat chicken, turkey, shrimp. I eat salmon, sardines. I eat tuna. Uh, Gosh, pork chops. You name it. I like all that stuff. And so it gives me a variety. I can kind of switch up now if it's a type of meat. And I'm a hunter as well. I deer hunt, and I harvest my own deer meat. And deer is very lean. It has very little fat. It does have some fat, but it's very lean. So, if I have a lean meat, say like chicken's fairly lean unless it's the wings, the thighs, the legs, and things like that. I'll have a little more fat to it, but the breast and stuff like that, is basically lean, doesn't have much fat. I'll always add some form of fat with it. I'll either cook it in lard or I'll cook it in bacon grease or tallow, and I may have full fat butter. I may just cook my eggs or something like that in butter to help get more fat. Eggs is another thing that I eat. Cheese is something that I've determined recently that I can't do. Even good full fat cheeses, and I love cheese. I've always used cheese on everything that I cook, basically. and I've determined that it causes me problems. So I had to do an elimination of that to see if some of the effects that I was experiencing went away. And so far, they seem to be subsiding. So I'm thinking that cheese may be an issue for me. Now, once I get more metabolically established and more metabolically healed inside from all this lifetime of eating wrong, I may be able to reintroduce some cheese and milk and things like that. Now I do like we can get raw milk here in Arkansas. I don't know if you can in Jersey or not, but we can actually get raw milk from farmers and from dairies, and it's unpasteurized, it's unhomogenized milk, and so we can actually skim the cream off of it and make our own homemade raw butter and stuff like that. I love that kind of stuff. Um, Gosh, what else do I do on a day-to-day basis? I like to switch up. I don't Ribeyes are so expensive anymore that I basically buy other cuts of meat. I like chuck steak is or chuck roast actually is what I buy, and it's very fatty. And you just have to experiment with how you want to cook it. I cook it basically. I cut it into chunks like stew meat, and I'll just brown that stew meat up in usually a little bit of beef tallow, and because the roast itself is fatty, so it will render down some grease. And I just brown that on all sides, and I'll eat about a pound of that a day. I may eat anywhere from four, sometimes six eggs. I may scramble them, and I may just cook them over easy or sunny side up. I love that. And some butter and salt. I love Redmond's sea salt or Malden's sea salt flakes and things like it. You need a real good sea salt. You need a good electrolyte in your body, because once you start this way of life, uh, you're going to lose a lot of liquid because a lot of the weight that comes off of you initially is water weight, because your body is holding this water because of inflammation. That was another thing I didn't mention earlier, was the inflammation. I had joint pain real bad. I'm an old truck driver. I actually still drive a little bit now locally, but years ago I drove long haul coast to coast. And so I was always constantly holding a steering wheel and a gear shift and bouncing around and everything. So I had joint pain in my hands and my fingers and my muscles, just everywhere. I had joint pain everywhere. And I initially thought that that was arthritis. I thought as I got older, I was having, arthritis was developing. When come to find out, once I did carnivore and had the elimination of the inflammation, all that pain went away, the joint pain. I had fingers that would lock up, and I would sometimes just have to reach up and unlock them like that because they were just locked up. I don't have that problem anymore. So, the
Wow.
type of foods you eat and the elimination of you've got to get rid of the bad cooking oils. I know they're cheap. I know, they're inexpensive. There's something that you can get real easy, but you know, I, I don't know if I can say this or not, but the good Lord provides our own grease through bacon, through lard, through pork fat, and through beef fat. You don't have to have those seed oils that's manufactured down there at the factory, because that's what's causing so much inflammation in our bodies, and it's causing so much diseases and different things like that, that it's really affecting people in a
Yeah,
negative way.
absolutely. I completely agree with everything you said. My friends, whenever I bring up the whole carnivore thing, the first thing they usually ask me, because you mentioned like the beef price is going up, right? So they always ask me, "Oh, how much is your grocery?" Like, like in total, it must be expensive, because the common understanding there is that because you're only buying meat, it sure has to be expensive, right? What do you usually say to them? To me, I tell them there's so much variety like you can choose from. You don't have to buy ribeyes every time. And you mentioned also you cook a lot of chuck roast, like different ways. Just try to be creative with it. What would you use? What do you say like to people say? Your grocery must be expensive.
Well, I mean, also you have 80/20 hamburger meat. That's a very good one to eat. It's not as expensive. It's been a little bit more in the past couple of years than it has over the years, but hamburger meat is fairly inexpensive. Tuna, salmon, all sorts of things you can actually have that's not that expensive. But when you ask, what do I say to people that say, how can you afford to do this because everything's so more expensive? The thing about it is I only eat once a day, and so as I'm fasting 23 hours, I'm not eating, so I'm not taking anything in. I eat 1 hour or between a half hour and an hour a day every day, and then I don't eat again till the next day, and I eat all that I want to eat that one particular day. So I'm not consuming a lot of products. I consume my chuck roast or hamburger meat or whatever, chicken thighs. I like to cook chicken thighs and chicken wings and stuff like that. I may, make tuna uh, with just mustard in it. I don't put mayonnaise unless I make my own mayonnaise. And I like deviled eggs. I may do that, and I'll put the mayonnaise, my homemade mayonnaise, in deviled eggs to put in tuna or something like that. Salmon patties, I may just mix those up and lightly fry those in a cast iron skillet of all things. But the other thing that I actually come back with on my friends and family when they say, how can you do that? It's so much expensive. But I don't like to waste food. I'm very frivolous when it comes to that. And so when you have food that sits in your refrigerator, say like lettuce or tomatoes or something like that, if you don't eat it in a certain amount of time, then it turns brown, and next thing you know, it's spoiling and you're throwing it out. So you're throwing a lot of money away when you could be purchasing things that's going to sustain you and it's going to be more healthy. And it's going to cost over in the long run. It's going to actually cost you less by doing that versus buying all these other things to eat 3 or 4 times a day with 2 or 3 snacks in between and maybe a snack before you go to bed. So you're actually consuming more price wise than I am.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. um, what is the hardest thing about being carnivore? I know you mentioned earlier, like, like gatherings with your family, sometimes some of them can give you a bad impression that, this carnivore thing is going to kill you, right? For me, it's the social gatherings, the travel, and the cravings in the beginning. For you, what is the hardest thing?
Yeah, that is one thing that you have to, you'll have to adjust to. I mean, my family knows me now; they know what I'm going to do. So, there's not much pressure anymore. Same way with all the people I work with now. They've sat and watched me do this from the very beginning, and some of them will kind of tease me from time to time and say, "Wow, you going to eat that much?" And, yeah, I'm going to eat that much, but I won't eat again until tomorrow. And but they just tease me. They've sat and watched the journey. They've sat and watched me lose the 54 pounds. They've sat and watched me, how much more limber I am now than I was. And so, I mean, they just kind of tease me anymore. I don't really have that kind of social pressure because when we go out to eat, I'm going to eat some form of meat or I'm going to eat some form of eggs or something. Bacon. Bacon's a big thing. I love bacon. Sausage is good. There's so many things that you can eat, and you can switch it up if so you don't get bored. And I think that's something that a lot of people worry about is, there's just not enough variety, but actually there is. You have to be creative, and you can have variety, and you can do this. So if you're watching me, I'm just telling you, you can do this, and the benefits outweigh anything that the negative aspects that you may be considering in your mind or you may have hear from your family. You can do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. You mentioned this earlier, so I'm just going to add on to this. How do you define success or like the progress in your journey, right? Because you mentioned earlier that you lost so much weight, but this is not really your goal, and it's just something that came with it, like losing weight. Also, your skin tags disappearing, signs of arthritis gone, but but they all just came with it. So how would you define like success through carnivore, keto, just not just on the physical changes?
Well, I think success for me, may be different than it is for many other people, but when you're metabolically sick, uh, when your sugar is high, when your insulin is high in your body, it causes many issues. It could be diabetes, it could be cancer, it could be heart disease, it could be even dementia or Alzheimer's. My dad passed away with dementia, and I often wonder if he was able, who have had the information and the knowledge that I have now, if he would have been able to eat that way of living or had that way of life of eating, if it would have kept him from developing dementia. I don't really know for sure about that. I just know that high insulin causes so many health issues. And so for me, the success is getting my diabetes, my sugar, my insulin under control. And based upon, the statistics as far as the A1C is concerned, I've dropped from 7.5. And when I went back 90 days, I don't know if I said this earlier or not, it went from 7.5 down to 5.3. And so when I went in to see my doctor, which 5.3 puts me below even being pre-diabetic. And so when I went in to see my doctor after that, he said, "Wow, Mike," he said, "what in the world have you been doing?" He said, "I can't believe this." He said, "Man, you look good." He said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "Well, I didn't want to say nothing about carnivore or keto because a lot of them doctors, they like, "Oh, you can't do that, man. You got to eat vegetables." So I just said, "Well, I just basically been doing an elimination diet." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've just basically eliminated a lot of the old vegetable oils and all the white things like rice and potatoes and, stuff like that, all the starchy foods." And I said, "I've actually, trying to be eating more healthy, more, and doing a little more exercise. I say actually do a little bit of fasting from time to time, not much, just a little here and there. And I've been walking a little bit." I said, I didn't initially start walking right away, but about 30 days or so, 45 days into starting carnivore, I actually started walking 15, 20, 30 minutes and sometimes even up to an hour. And he said, "Wow," he said, "that's great." He said, "That's what we try to tell everybody to do." He said, "Man," he said, "you're doing great. You just keep doing what you're doing." And I'm thinking, yeah, if you really knew exactly what I was doing, you might not go along with that because, they're not about, most of your doctors think that this is not sustainable, that you've got to have carbohydrates. But the micronutrients that we have, the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrates, we only really need two, and that's protein and fat. The carbohydrates, your body actually makes it even eating protein. So your liver actually makes that. So you actually have carbs, but, and makes cholesterol and stuff. So anyway, that's it just kind of shocks the doctors and nurses when they see something like that, and they were just excited. Typically, like I said earlier, you're supposed to go back every 90 days to do another A1C. So there I am, and he sees and he's reading it. It says 5.3. He said, "Man, you're doing great." He said, "I don't even want to see you again for another 6 months." And I said, "Good deal." We'll see in 6 months, maybe a year. Who knows? I may not even come back.
That's awesome. um, yeah, I remember you saying that. Actually, so the beginning of our conversation, I know you were mentioning I'm gonna do this, right? So after your visit with the doctor, I'm gonna, approach this. I'm gonna do this carnivore. I feel like it's a big mindset shift, to stick with that approach. What exactly, like led you to that? Is it because the research, or like the people's stories, or just that one quick decision that made you, yeah, I'm gonna do this because of this?
Yes, well, it was actually, as I said earlier about my brother developing pancreatic cancer, and he was heavy, he was big, he loved to cook. We all of everybody in our family loved to cook, and loves to cook, and we're all good cooks if we have to say so ourselves. But anyway, we were just eating the wrong stuff, and so I watched him suffer through that, and he passed away at age 59, and I'm 61 now, so I thought, I don't want to try to go through anything like that. I see what people struggle with. I see what my wife with. I live with her, and I see the struggles that she has battling diabetes. She's on Manjaro, so it's keeping her sugar under control. But she has what's called neuropathy, which is deadening of the nerve endings in her feet and legs, and she really has a lot of struggles with that. And so when I got the initial diagnosis that my A1C had risen uh, from 6.5 up to 7.5, and that now I was basically considered diabetic. And let me just say this too initially, when I first found out, 5.3 is basically your baseline uh, to determine whether you're pre-diabetic or not. Anywhere from 5.3 up to 6.5 is pre-diabetes. Anything from 6.5 on up to 7 or 7.5 is diabetes. Anything above that is full-blown diabetes. When I was
Wow.
down lower, they never even said anything to me about it. They never even said, you need to get this under control until it jumped up to 7.5. And then they wanted to call me in. They didn't even want to talk to me about diet and exercise. They just wanted the first thing right off the bat,
Mhm.
try to see about putting me on some type of medication to get this under control. Well, in my eyes, that's really not a way of healing. That's just drug dealing, brother. I mean, they're not being healers there. They're just being drug dealers. I mean, they just want to push some pills on you, and I didn't want none of that. I said, it's like I said earlier, I've eaten my way into this condition, and I'm going to eat my way out of it. And that's what I did. That was my why. That's what pushed me.
Ah, that's really awesome. I feel like just hearing your story, it makes me feel like, I have to think more about my own health. I feel like so many people dealing with, I guess, like the same struggle with diabetes could really benefit from just hearing your journey. Um, if you can give one piece of advice to someone just starting or someone struggling with diabetes, um, I guess about taking control of their health, what would it be?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because here's the thing about it that you need to keep in mind. You didn't get in this condition overnight. It has taken time to get to where you are. So if you're pre-diabetic or you're already diabetic or you have some other chronic conditions, maybe heart disease or cancer even, you didn't get this way overnight. And so this is not a microwave solution. You're not going to heal and change immediately overnight. It's going to take time. And so you're going to have to get your mind right and say, listen, I'm going to do this. Come hell or high water, I'm going to do this. And you have to stick to it. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. There's going to be days that you're just, you're on top of the world and you're thinking, wow, this is the greatest thing, since sliced bread. But there's going to be days you're thinking, what in the world am I doing? I just can't do this. I'm not going to do this anymore. But you have to think about your own physical condition. We have to take care of our own body because it's the only one we have. And so you have got to do that for yourself. You can't do it for your wife or your husband or your mother or your dad or a family member or people you work with or whatever. You have to do this for you.
I
And you can
absolutely agree.
and you can do it.
I absolutely agree. Um, if you had to describe the impact of this lifestyle, this diet, on your life, what in one word, what would it be and why?
In one word, unbelievable. I would say this is actually unbelievable because it goes against anything we have ever been taught. We've been taught a way of eating, this what we call, excuse me, Ken Berry coined it as the standard American diet or the sad diet, standard American diet. And this is the way we have been taught. this is a way, and it's not just in the United States. It's not the American way. I have Puerto Rican friends and Mexican friends. I have friends all around the world, and they may not eat exactly as I did, but they may have rice or potatoes or some kind of starches or something that their family, that just was a staple in their family, and some of those things was causing issues for them. But it's just unbelievable how when you start following this way of eating, at the changes that you will personally feel, and in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, some just future perspective questions. How do you see carnivore evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, where do you see carnivore community going into the future? Have some positive example and some negative, like negative being, hey, maybe they will start censoring because it's been working for so many people, right? And at the same time, the good side is that we have more people, trying it out, like getting involved, like spreading the word.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People like you and I and different ones that are experienced this, we just have to tell our story because it's personal to us. This is not some statistics. This is not some test or whatever that, maybe your big pharmaceutical companies or your big food and agricultural companies have, done some kind of research on or whatever. This is actual personal to all of us of what has actually changed. And so I think those stories are going to have impact. Now, there's always going to be controversy. There's always going to be, negativity. We're not ever going to get away from that. We're always going to have the naysayers. We're always going to have on YouTube videos, we're going to have trolls that are going to say bad things to us and, all kinds of things. And matter of fact, that was another reason why on my channel, I actually quit making videos for a short period of time because of Crisco. I was actually created a video of seasoning cast iron with Crisco, and Lord have mercy, you just couldn't believe the comments I got, Joseph, from people. The negative comments about, oh, you can't be using Crisco. That stuff ain't no good. You're telling people this, use this, and it ain't good for you. It's unhealthy. It's the most unhealthy thing, and la di da, just all sorts of things. But we're always going to have the naysayers. We're always going to have people that are negative toward it. But then again, you're also going to have that subset of people that are saying, hey, I'm glad you said that. I've actually started this. I've started, and I have this question. I'd like to ask you this question about this, and what do you think about that? And you'll have people like yourself reach out to you and say, hey, would you be willing to come onto my channel and tell your story? And so, you just got to hang in there and just realize you're going to have problems. You're going to have people that are going to try to steer you wrong and say you're doing wrong. And you just keep living on the benefits of what you've been feeling, the way you feel, the changes you felt, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. We just have to tell our story, and then we have to reach out to the rest of the world. And then if we get rejected, I'm thinking, so what? We did. So, if people to reach out, the best place to connect with you.
Well, I guess the best way to reach out to me is through my channel name, Mr. Cast Iron. You can type it in, search it in Google, or you can search on YouTube or wherever. You're going to find me because we're on most all of the social media. Now, I'm not real active on TikTok or real active on Instagram or stuff like that. I don't really understand Instagram too much, so I never really got involved in it. Now, YouTube, I love YouTube. I love the YouTube community. I've been fooling with YouTube since probably 2008, but this particular channel here has been running since 2019, I think it was, and we've made a lot of great friends in the YouTube community, and a lot of people in the world have commented on videos, sent me emails, sent me texts because my phone number's there, my email address is there. You can find me real easy, and I've had people email me and text me and and asking questions about how to deal with not so much carnivore at the time. I am getting some of that now, but mainly about cast iron at that particular time. And so I'm pretty easy to find if you just type in Mr. Cast Iron, and we'll be glad to talk with anyone. We'd love to hear from you.
That's excellent. I'll make sure to post it all in the description. Mike, thank you so much again for joining me. I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning about your journey. Thank you.
You're welcome, Joseph. Thank you for inviting me.